Hello to my beautiful family of light. Yes, that means you. My name is Claudia, and I want to welcome you to my channel. I'm all about matters of the spirit and us being spiritual beings, having this life in this physical form, but being children of our Creator. Welcome to my channel. I'm happy to have you here. And this episode came about because I had something happen the other day. It was just a really simple thing, but what it reminded me of was when my son was younger. He was a young teen at the time. I left him with his dad when he was 11. And everybody was in agreement about that. Now, they didn't have much of an option. I will say everybody gets an option, right? But I was told to go and move a few states away, and that was my guidance. And at that time, it was a pretty big to do. Well, it would be for anybody, wouldn't it? But when your source says, you're going to move here, and here's what I want you to do leading up to that. And so followed the instructions, did that. And then you leave your son with his dad because he won't let you take him out of state, but you're not going to stay behind. That's how committed I was. That is the person that I am, and that when I trust the instructions that I'm given by my Creator. And believe me, if you haven't had an experience of the divine, once you do, you cannot go back. It will forever be something that comes from inside of you. Is absolutely no doubt in your mind about that you need to follow these instructions. And when you do, profound things happen. Now, of course, everybody's life got altered then. So I leave this youngster, right, 11 years old, and over the next few years while I'm in the Rocky Mountains, he's flown out a few times a year. He spends 6 weeks with me during the summers, and his dad gets the other 4 weeks. And then Christmas, the 3 of those years, I drove home so that I could have Christmas with my entire family. That was our holiday celebration, was a big family dinner, and there things that I would read a Christmas story and get to visit with everybody, and they had an opportunity to see that I was thriving and not, dying. Now, I will tell you, it's not easy when you take the path of, I want to call it least resistance, but the truth of it is when you live in a physical world, and I was from a very large family. When we had meals like at Christmas, there was between 60 and 70 people quite often at these events. I'll say just average 50. But, I'm from a large Italian, old world Italian family. So during that time, and this is my story, right? You have to kind of find your own place in this, because I think everybody can relate to when you come into yourself, your true self, where you're not following what everybody else, what the masses want, what your boss wants, and you're following your own drummer. You get to the conclusion in a way that is harmonious for you and for everybody else if they will leave you alone, right? Anyhow, I did have, family members that were actually distraught over my decisions. I had one individual did not talk to me for 10 years because I divorced. And then when I left my son with his dad to be raised from age 11, then on through the teen years, we just compounded that and added another 10 years. And nobody not once asked me why I did that. And that's okay. You do what I couldn't have explained it. Well, I have this voice inside my head. It comes into my heart and gives me an inspired thought. And then I act on the thought and they're like, oh my God, the rest of us have to pay. We all got to pay the rent. We all got to buy groceries. We got to fix the car. We've got to do the dental work and the doctor appointments and, the sports and everything else that's included. And it seemed very selfish to everyone. In fact, I battled that notion myself a bit. Isn't this being selfish? And the answer is always no. When God calls you, it's because there's work for you to do on his behalf. I didn't know at the time, but I did know I had this very strong knowing that I was supposed to do this no matter what. And that's partly what I've written about in the book. Anyhow, so here I am now living in Wyoming, 3 states away from where I was living and working in the Seattle area. And my son is coming out for these visits, and they're jovial, but and fun. We've always enjoyed each other. We can do anything like playing cards or games or play tennis and swim or ride bikes or hike or whatever. And my son, I was very athletic and energetic, and I've had lots of problems since then. But anyhow. So this was the year he turned 15, and he flew out for the summer. And I'm waiting in the area where you're waiting for passengers to disembark, and they come down from the plane down the ladder, or the steps, and cross the tarmac and come in. And I did not see this shorter, stockier. He was never heavy. I would just call him pudgy. He went through that little stage where when I left him, it was pudgy, but I had seen him. And so I'm looking for this shorter, kid that comes up to about here on me. And I did not see him, and I was getting a little anxious, and I'm looking, and people are passing me by that are coming in from the plane. And finally I'm like, well, where is he? And I turned around, and he's standing right, kind of off of one of my shoulders. And the reason I recognized him was he had this massive big grin. He had grown 6 or 7 inches, and he was tall and lanky, and was wearing a cap. And I did not recognize him. And he held out his arms and he said, hello, Mom. And my little heart just absolutely melted in that moment. When you are a mother of a youngster, it's different than when they become semi-adults. I mean, he was more than a teen. He was probably, 15, 16 at that time. Because I don't remember exactly. I don't think it's that important for me to look that up, but he was in that range. And to have grown so much and to have changed, and here he is lean and, so wonderful. And we had a great time. My heart for this felt like a different meeting for us than any other time that we had ever met. He may have been 16 at that time. Anyhow, so we had a great time. The as it did in the spring, often for him and his visits, we went from temperatures in the 30s, 20s, 30s, and 40s. Spring in the Rocky Mountains is always an iffy deal. To riding bikes and playing tennis and being able to go up to other areas, and just exploring. There's dinosaurs in the area and all kinds of stuff. But I never ever touched on divorce with him. I left most things, I made myself available for him to talk about anything, his girlfriend or, whatever. And I kept myself involved in his schoolwork and kept up with the counselors there and what he was doing. And but I knew this was building, because over the last few visits he had been, you could tell he was holding back. And one day he came out, and so I gave it a couple weeks, and then I started pushing buttons, pressing a little bit harder. And it took about a week or maybe 10 days, and all of a sudden he exploded, and he just stood in front of me, just spewing all kinds of stuff about how I'd messed up. That wasn't the word he used, but I'm keeping it clean. How I'd messed up his life, and how could anybody do that to their kid, and on and on and on. And I just let him exhaust himself. And finally he just said, "You owe me an explanation." And I took a deep breath and looked at him, and I said, "You're right. But I said, I'm going to say that over all these years, you've been getting explanations, and there hasn't been one that has satisfied you." I said, you're experiencing what happens when adults are not getting along and they fight, and the result is then separation, divorce. For how long did your dad and I not even share the bedroom, right? I mean, it was just, we didn't like each other anymore. And he never knew what to do, and he wasn't a talker. And so I said, no amount of explaining is ever gonna make it right for you. And what you can take from this, I said, you're standing at a crossroads. You can't see what's ahead of you, where you're headed, what's down this road or that road, if you decide to go off and go to college over there, or you decide to do this sport instead, but you know what's behind you. And I said, you know what happened to you as a result of two people who did not get along and who got divorced. I said, you know that. I said, son, you can turn around and go to start your life, but you have to be aware of whether that is a ball and chain you're packing with you. If you're dragging that along, you're going to take it into every relationship you ever have from here forward. You're going to take it into your work with you. You are going to take it into every activity, every relationship, and what's most important is your relationship with yourself. So I said, you're at a crossroads, and I said, you get to choose, and it is only your choice. Are you going to drag that with you the rest of your life, or are you going to take what you've learned from it and go into the rest of your life knowing that you need to make better choices, better decisions, ask more questions. Don't go willy-nilly into a relationship because, your hormones are raging and it looks like a good, partner, or that she's attractive. You've got to have a whole package when you have a relationship. It has to be someone who is going to tick all of your boxes. Would this be a good person to have a marriage with? Would this be a supportive partner? Would this be, somebody who wants kids and would be a good mother? Would she be loving to me and helpful? So I said, anyhow, that's where you're at. I cannot do that for you, but if you have any questions or want to know, I said, no amount of explaining is ever going to help you, but the choice is yours, what you do with it from now on. So he left me angry and frustrated and didn't talk to me for the next 5 days. Now, by now I'm not a typical person. I'm not a typical mother. I wasn't a typical wife. It's no wonder that he was probably frustrated and upset with me. And I'm not a typical worker. I want you to give me an assignment and I'll talk with you about my thoughts and ideas about how to accomplish that. You don't need to lead me by the nose through something. Anyhow, so it's a good thing I work for myself, right? Anyhow, it went for about 5 days. And on the 5th day, he came up from his walk or, bedroom or whatever. And he walked right over to me and put his hands on my shoulders, and he stood there looking at me, holding me at arm's length. And he said, you're right. You're right. It did mess things up for a lot of people, and there's a lot of people involved, not, just you and Dad and me. It's the rest of the family. All the stuff we had talked about, he touched on a lot. So obviously he listened and he heard some things. And he said, and the other thing you're right about is, Mom, I don't want to live my life being angry and upset. I'll try to remember the lessons from it. And I love you. And with that, he has never since then, told me that I was a bad mother or anything else. And we've gotten along, and I leave him alone. His life is his, and when he wants to talk with me about something important, he will call and he will ask. And so we have that kind of a great relationship. Anyhow, it was the best thing in my life that summer that he announced his new status as a young adult and called me Mom. And he left hugging me, saying, I love you, Mom. And there is no greater thing than to be loved by your child. So with that, I hope there's a message in that for you, because we make mistakes. I don't consider any aspect of my life a mistake. I have learned and grown and come miles along because I've done certain things. There are things I would not repeat. But if you keep repeating something, then I would call that a mistake. Stop doing that. Anyhow, I want you to know that I love you. We're spiritual beings. And if I've given you something, food for thought, to look back at your own life and something that maybe you could correct, I'm not saying I haven't been wrong, and I will apologize when I have, many times over if necessary, but we're here to learn and to grow and evolve from it. And if we're not doing that, then we are not being true expressions of our Father, God, Creator. So thank you. I love you.